entered your destination.
This video is brought to you by the DPW Mystery Box. All you gotta do is check out the link in the description to learn more information. We're giving away a mystery box filled with pro wrestling merchandise and related items to one lucky follower. All you gotta do is follow me on Twitter. Click the link down below, more information in that link. Impact Wrestling World Champion Brian Cage was backstage at Double or Nothing, and today we're going to talk about the big reveal as to why he was banned from the Double or Nothing pay-per-view. So with that being said, make sure you guys click that like button, leave a comment down below, and as always, subscribe. Welcome back to Destination Pro Wrestling here on YouTube. My name is Tony, and as always, you guys can follow me on Twitter at DPWTony. And I gotta be honest with you guys, I was really shocked by this news. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we are talking about the report that came from PW Insider that stated Brian Cage, the Impact Wrestling World Champion, was backstage at Double or Nothing, but was notified by the management of Impact Wrestling that he is banned from the event and he is not going to show up. Now, of course, this might make sense to a lot of people, right? Because he technically is not allowed to compete elsewhere. But AEW had some pretty nice names on that card, and obviously featuring a world champion from another promotion is beneficial to all parties involved. Now you're probably wondering, how is it beneficial? So I'm going to break down the pros first, and of course there are some cons, so we'll talk about it. Well, pro number one, it's very simple. He's a world champion of Impact Wrestling. And for that, Impact Wrestling is looking to grow their company. They've had some pretty good content going out on a weekly basis. Obviously, you know, they're doing their show on the Pursuit channel. But if you don't have that channel, like most cable providers don't actually carry that channel, then you have the ability to watch it live on Twitch for free every Friday night as well. So why would they not want their world champion on AEW? Well, again, we'll kind of get to that, but he is the world champion of that promotion, and it would have been really great promotion for Impact to see that their world champion was taking place on such a historical card. Now, I got to be honest with you, I love Brian Cage. I think he's a great athlete. I think he is everything that pretty much most pro wrestling companies in the world want. So, as expected, I did find this shocking. But he is the world champion, and Impact Wrestling pretty much needs all the clout that they need. Having him appear would have been big for Impact. It would have brought a lot of attention to Impact Wrestling. And if you're AEW, you know, it's a great way to have some sort of inter-promotion collaboration, obviously, between the two companies. So pro number one, recognition. Number two, AEW needed some heavyweights. They needed some big guys on that show. And this would have worked out really advantageous for AEW because obviously Impact Wrestling's world champion showing up on their card, on their event, it would have generated a lot of discussion, especially as a surprise, mainly due to the fact that not a lot of surprises had actually leaked out prior to the show. Which kudos to AEW because that is very, very hard, especially in 2019. Pro number three, not only did we talk about the recognition and how it's beneficial for AEW, but it's beneficial for Brian Cage and that championship belt. So Brian Cage being a world champion on AEW, it definitely gets people talking, which again, we kind of mentioned that, the recognition part, but now it has the chance to show people why the world championship in Impact is prestigious and why the guy who is carrying it is meant to carry that belt. It's not very believable if you saw a guy like Dustin Thomas eliminate Brian Cage. So the fact that Brian Cage would have been able to go into like the Battle Royal, for example, and make a huge impact, no pun intended, obviously people would be talking about it. Literally, all of the pros to this goes back to one thing, and that is the recognition Impact Wrestling would receive. Now, I do understand some of the cons, and the biggest con of all that I really want to focus on is, can Impact Wrestling trust AEW to not make their world champion look weak? And honestly, with the way AEW is positioned as a company, they're looking to do good business. I'm not saying Brian Cage, you know, would get buried, but obviously, unless he's signing full-time to AEW, it doesn't make sense to see him win, you know, a number one contendership for their world championship. Obviously, that was slated for Hangman Page. So if you are Impact Wrestling, I could understand that maybe you might have some fear that he might be buried, but ultimately Brian Cage is a big wrestler
logically, which, by the way, that show had a lot of logic, it would have made a lot of sense, to have him in the match. Regardless if he would have lost the Battle Royal or not, there's ways to logically book this man on the show. Now, me personally, I think Impact Wrestling screwed up. There's been a lot of negative press on Impact Wrestling lately, and it seems to be a current trend consistently, honestly, throughout the last few years, that Impact Wrestling gets a lot of hate, a lot of negativity. But if you really watch and follow the program, you would notice that they're doing a lot of things right creatively. Yeah, they're not selling out major venues, and they are kind of struggling as far as growth, but ultimately they are one of the most consistent products out in pro wrestling right now. And as I say that, I'm sure I'm going to get some comments from people who don't agree, but if you logically think about everything that's gone on with Impact Wrestling, you'll see what I mean. Obviously, they've been very, very consistent. This is a big move for Impact Wrestling, and honestly, I'm kind of saddened by the fact that they didn't have him on there. Having him bring out their world championship, like that belt means something. I'm surprised that AEW even had him backstage, but ultimately, Double or Nothing would have been a great success with or without Brian Cage. But it still doesn't mean that we wouldn't have seen something very awesome come from this, especially because Impact Wrestling is trying to get more recognition, especially because they're trying to make their world title mean something. It would have made a lot of sense for all parties involved. So obviously Impact Wrestling wins by having recognition. Brian Cage, he definitely gets a W here because not only is he on Impact as the world champion, but now he is on the most talked about wrestling product in 2019. And then of course AEW benefits because they basically get two of those things. People would be talking about AEW. People would be very interested to see what AEW does with him. And it's really shocking. Honestly, I don't know how many times I could say this, but it's really shocking that Impact Wrestling didn't want that, especially after there's been so much talk about Impact Wrestling contracts, people asking to be released. A lot of it is stuff that I call bullshit, but ultimately negative press is still press, and I don't think it's good for them at this point. I think they need a lot more good press to come out that helps rise and build their promotion all the way up. Because let's face it, they are not pulling in the viewers that they once were pulling. And I would argue that this right now is the best creative product that they've had for a very, very long time. Now, it's also really stupid that Impact Wrestling chose to do this while he was already backstage. They notified him, letting him know that he was not going to be, at Double or Nothing. But just a really interesting report. And there's a couple of things I want to say too, because I think a lot of people often forget how good Impact Wrestling is. Okay? But this could have opened up doors for a working relationship. And if I'm backstage at AEW and I'm one of those guys who have to make a decision as to whether or not we work with this company, do a talent share, which both rosters are really good. Impact has an incredible roster that a lot of people often forget. This could have opened up doors for a working relationship, and I personally feel that this decision to not have Brian Cage on that show, I wouldn't say it set them back a lot, but they definitely didn't take 2 or 3 steps forward. They definitely took a couple steps back, and it just doesn't work out for the best pro wrestling product. Again, Impact Wrestling could have been plugged on media outlets. They could have been plugged by AEW. They could have been plugged by commentary. There was just so much that could have been done. Ultimately, all the pros that I've mentioned, it boils down to one thing. They all relate to each other. It's recognition, especially when you desperately need the recognition, especially when you need people talking. AEW is trending #1 worldwide. Like, these are things that are absolutely a big deal. These are things that Impact is not getting right now on television. They're not trending. They're not making big waves. People ask me all the time, why don't you talk about Impact Wrestling more often? I love Impact Wrestling, but unfortunately, they're not doing stuff that generates a big conversation, and this would have been the piece to do it. Brian Cage is scheduled to defend his world championship at the next pay-per-view, which is Slammiversary against Michael Elgin, and I personally don't see him retaining that belt. And if reports are true about talent being unhappy about their low-paying contracts or whatever it may be, I don't know. I don't want to talk about that specifically because, again, I kind of feel like a lot of that is bullshit. But when I hear some of this stuff about Brian Cage, not being able to compete at AEW, it does make me think that management might be mishandling their stars. I'm not sure, but again, there's been a lot of reports, Killer Cross, Scarlett Bordeaux, now the Twitter exchange between Scott D'Amore and KM, Kevin Matthews, aka whatever the hell his name was. Guys, just think about it. This would have worked out for everybody involved. It would have been a very smart move. But he was banned from AEW, literally. Like, Impact Wrestling said, you're not showing up. You're off limits. You cannot contractually do that, which is also weird considering that Impact will let him wrestle for a ton of small little promotions that don't bring him any interest or any revenue. So, again, it's really, really interesting. It's really sad. But I want to know what you guys think about Impact not allowing Brian Cage to compete at Double or Nothing. Did we miss out on an awesome moment? I personally think so, but I can't wait to hear your opinion. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And don't forget, you could become a DPW champion, $4.99 a month, no contract, no hassle, no problems whatsoever. You guys get perks and rewards for showing your support to the channel, and it works out for both of us. So if you guys are interested in that, click the link in the description down below. I'll see you next time.